Hello there, I'm Kaz. They say those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Let's talk about Konami.
In case I haven't made it clear, I loathe Konami. At least the way the modern Konami operates. Not to say there aren't competent people working there, just that the amount of competence displayed by them is disproportionate to the incompetent decisions made by the higher-ups. In the past week or so since writing this review, we've seen the company cancel a highly anticipated game in one of their most revered series, the teaser to said title being removed from PSN, and rumors of mismanagement of the many studios that work under that red logo.
And because I'm filming this so late, yes, I am aware that Kojima Productions is supposedly being shut down. I'd like to say that I'm so shocked by this news, but honestly, this just seems like an ordinary day for them.
Let's not forget that this is the same company that teased a new Contra title only to cancel it behind the scene. Over the past generation or so of gaming, Konami has made enough baffling decisions to give EA a run for its money. The difference is that the decisions Konami makes have such little relevance to the industry in comparison to Electronic Arts. They've lost a lot of their main talent, like Koji Igarashi. They blackmailed Jim Sterling for the gall of discussing their aforementioned incompetence, and, if rumors are to be believed, they fired Hideo Bloody Kojima.
You know, the guy who was responsible for a little series, you might have heard of it, what was it called again? Oh yeah, Metal Gear!
Metal Gear.
Yeah, Metal Gear.
Metal Gear.
Shut up, Snake.
Let's not even get into the baffling decision to release a butchered port of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater on the 3DS when a superior version of the game already existed, or the fact that they made a superior collection with almost every Metal Gear game a year later, and focus on the facts. Regardless of whatever is happening behind the scenes, it's clear that this is not the same company that brought everybody Contra, brought everyone Silent Hill, brought everyone Symphony of the Night, and Metal Gear Solid. This is the company that gave the green light to Never Dead. This is the company that split Metal Gear Solid 5 into 2 games and almost charged $40 for the prologue to said game. This is the company that got Glee to perform an awful cover of Somebody to Love at what is, bar none, the most cringeworthy E3 press conference of all time. Of all time.
And if anybody's gonna try and argue otherwise, I got 4 words for you. Silent Hill HD Collection. Well, that and the fact that any company that can ruin a Queen song is a company I can't trust to do anything right. Not one.
And if that's not enough for you, I got 4 more. 6 Days in Fallujah. Well, I say 4 more. There's some choice words for whatever mongrels are running Konami right now that I'd love to say, but I do try to keep things family-friendly around here. I don't know what the future holds for Konami. Looking through the recent financial sheet, they're doing alright, even if they're not making as much money as they used to selling video games, but I do know this. However they may fare in other industries, their utterly horrific mismanagement of their digital studios will only lead to a loss of talent working for them in the video game industry. Not for the talented folks that still work under that red logo.
See also, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which, full disclosure, I backed.
In this age of crowdfunded content, those talented folks will do just fine, doing what they do best with or without Konami. You want to know how I know that?
You know, aside from how successful Bloodstained's Kickstarter turned out to be? Well, it's because the exact same thing happened over 20 years ago. Sort of.
In 1992, Masato Migawa, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name, then a Konami employee, tired of the company's management, in particular the focus on sequels leading to less original games being made, decided to leave Konami along with several co-workers to form their own company, founding Treasure Inc. on June 19, 1992. While the company has worked for several large publishers over the years, including Konami, they have done a fair amount of independent titles. In fact, one could argue that the way Treasure designs their games is very much a precursor to the indie boom that occurred in the last console generation, taking a classic genre and adding their own spin to it, though some of the earlier games that they were making were done during the period in which the classics were being made. As cheap a joke as it may be, Treasure is responsible for some of the very best titles in their respective genres, ones that do deserve to be treasured for the classics that they are. Heck, they made the definitive Astro Boy video game, which I'm sure I'm going to talk about someday.
This time around, we'll be looking at the first game Treasure ever made. Gunstar Heroes for the Sega Genesis.
Well, I say Genesis, but I'm actually playing the PC re-release that's a part of the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive classics. The original game was released on September 9, 1993, being published by Sega. Ordinarily, I don't cover games with the Sega logo on them because, well, Sega. But like Aliens Infestation, Sega was only responsible for publishing the title, not developing it. Besides, if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to talk about the fact that, well, no one really wanted this game. Despite its popularity and the acclaim it's received since its release, nearly every producer and associate producer at Sega turned down the title, mostly due to the small characters on the screen. It wasn't until Max Nauer, the same man who would go on to greenlight the original Tomb Raider and Spec Ops, picked up the title and, I quote, played it for 5 minutes, maybe less, and threw down the controller on the floor and said, "This is Game of the Year." The title sold decently enough, but it wasn't a major hit like other Sega titles, mostly because Sega didn't produce many copies, having little faith in the game despite the accolades it received during the year of its release.
And yet, for some reason, Sega decided that they would include a Fruit Roll-Ups package in every box. Yes, really. This is a thing that happened in the 90s.
In recent times, the Genesis version has become a collector's item, going for upwards of $45. This was also one of the few games that Treasure made that ever got a sequel, but that's a discussion for another time. For now, let's take a look at Treasure's first title and see how just rich of an experience the premiere title provides. The story is not very well explained, so I might as well just skip to the gameplay. Look, Run and Gunners and Treasure titles are not known for their gripping tales, and Gunstar Heroes is no exception. Something about 4 gems and a spell that needs to be broken. I had to look up who the characters were and what they do on the internet just to get the gist of the plot. All you need to know is there's a bad guy who looks a lot like M. Bison, 2 good guys named Red and Blue, and that you need to save the world because they're the good guys. Next. Gunstar Heroes is a classic run and gunner, a genre deeply rooted in the arcades. I say rooted because, as tempting as it may be to compare it to Konami's Contra series, Gunstar Heroes branches out beyond it and provides a greater amount of flexibility for the player, ranging from the weapon they use to the mere ability to choose the order of the first 4 stages. You begin by choosing one of the 2 different playable characters, each with their own unique playstyles. There's one who can run and shoot at the same time, while the other one can shoot in 8 directions but can't move while firing. As great as offering 2 different playstyles may be, as they do change the way that you play the game, it would have been better to simply have this as a mode you could change between, since some weapons simply work better for one than the other. Yes, it's understandable that given the limited amount of buttons on the Genesis controller, that it wouldn't have been possible to do this during the game, since the Genesis didn't see a 6-button controller until the year this game was released, but it could have been an option when pausing the game at least. Me personally, I prefer the ability to shoot and run simultaneously. This is a running gun after all. Besides, the inability to shoot 8 directions is compensated with the ability to shoot in any direction you want when hanging onto a surface. As for weapons, there's 4 basic ones to start off with and 2 slots for you to carry them around. The 4 basic weapons include the Lightning, which fires a series of lasers that can pass through multiple enemies, the Chaser which, well, chases enemies, the Force.
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
There, got that reference out of the way, which is a basic rapid fire shot, while the Flame is a powerful short-range weapon. In addition to whatever weapon you start off with, you can double down on the same weapon for a more powerful version, or you can fill your second slot with a different weapon and mix them together to create different combinations. Want a laser that can home in on enemies? You can do that! How about a homing flame? There's that too! The possibilities are not endless, but they're still very creative and fun to experiment with, yet again giving the player more flexibility in whatever weapon they want. You can even swap between one of your 2 weapon slots or the combination they form. On top of your weapon of choice, there's also melee attack that can be performed by holding the D-pad and the jump button in a certain direction. These attacks can be useful for certain boss fights, but more often than not, you'll forget about them for regular runs when simply firing your weapon will do the job. You can also throw enemies by pressing the fire button if they're close enough, but this is less helpful than you'd think, especially given how busy the screen can get as enemies constantly respawn. All in all, it's a pretty robust combat system, one that the game takes full advantage of by testing the player at every turn. It's a pretty challenging title, even on normal difficulty, but not an unfair one. Every death is your fault, and not the result of some cheap tactic like knockback right into the pit leading to an instant death. While you do only have 1 life per continue, you have a pretty large amount of health, and most stages feature several checkpoints that let you continue when you die, in addition to featuring unlimited continues. If you are having trouble and have a friend, there's always co-op. Yes, just like in the arcades, a second player can drop in at any time you're playing and choose from the same set of characters mentioned earlier, along with a primary weapon, so they're not locked into some predetermined playstyle just because they happen to hold the second controller, instead letting them choose whatever they feel like using. The only downside is that whenever they join, your health is split in half between the 2 of you, and if they die, they can then press start to cut your health in half again, which means you'll start to lose health very quickly, especially if the person you're playing with is, you know, awful. The level design is sublime, always keeping things fresh with a good amount of variety and fast-paced action. Save for the dice stage. Seriously, I can never get over a 3 on this. This is ridiculous. Well, that really slows down the fast-paced gameplay when you're just standing around, stuck in a room tossing a dice, and taking on what amounts to nothing more than a boss rush with the occasional pointless deviation. In contrast, the best of them is an on-rail card section where you can jump from the bottom to the top of the screen. It's a great way of shaking up the gameplay while still keeping true to the fast-paced nature present in the game. If there's one area where Gunstar Hero falters, it's the boss fights. There are some neat ones like this thing that you can't use your weapon against, and the fight against Green is a classic, but for the most part, they're forgettable and far too easy. The only other complaint I have is that the score is kinda pointless. It doesn't give you extra lives, the game doesn't have a leaderboard of any sort, at least not on the PC version, it's just there for the sake of having a score system. Yes, in terms of design, it makes the experience feel more like an arcade game on a home console, but it adds nothing to the gameplay itself. As far as problems pertaining to the PC version itself, there's several moments of screen tearing and slowdown, although in fairness the Genesis version has its own share of slowdown. The music, while not quite as impressive as the visuals or as memorable, still pump out some decent tunes from the Genesis's, with all honesty, mediocre sound chip.
There's a reason why so many of Treasure's titles have become such beloved classics over the years, capturing the purest essence of every genre that they tackle, and Gunstar Heroes is among their best examples of this. Easily one of the finest run and gunners ever crafted.
As I mentioned earlier, Gunstar Heroes has become something of a collector's item for those seeking out a physical copy. Luckily, it's been re-released several times, ranging from the Sega Game Gear to a collection of Treasure's titles on the PlayStation 2. Digitally, it's available for Xbox Live Arcade and PSN for $5, both of which added online co-op and leaderboards, as well as iOS devices for a little over $1, Steam for $3, and coming to the 3DS in August.
In this day and age, it's never been easier to be an independent developer. So whatever happens to Konami, the talented folks who work there will still be around doing what they do best. That's all for now, folks. Until next time, game on, my friends. And for those wondering, yes, I'll be reviewing the Sega/Game Freak title, Tembo the Badass Elephant. Although I don't think we've seen that much of his ass or the badness thereof.